and Billy Ratliff recovered.
Hour number 3 of the Morning Rush, going to the phone lines and welcoming in ESPN's Sean McDonough here to the Morning Rush. Sean, thanks so much for making some time for us, man.
Hey, my pleasure. Great to be with you guys. Hope everything's going well with you.
I can't complain. So we had that intro coming in. I mean, Sean, you've called some fantastic games over the years. To me, the one that stands out the most is the ending of Michigan and Michigan State. Is there a game that has been as climactic and as crazy as how that one finished in Ann Arbor?
Not an ending that I can remember. You know, that the game ended on that play, and it was so unfathomable. I mean, I remember we were talking, Chris Spielman and I were talking before that snap that he had trouble with, that, you know, all Michigan had to do was get the punt off, and the game was over. And, you know, Michigan State didn't even have anybody back for the punt. So just to have it end the way that it did on the last play of the game, in a rivalry game, you know, it was the beginning of Jim Harbaugh's tenure. It was really a chance to have a huge win and make a national statement. And, you know, we were kind of talking about how that might be the case if they got the punt off, and obviously they didn't. So certainly among all the games I've done, that's the ending that stands out the most in terms of the last play.
I was talking with Amanda Brooks, who does PR for ESPN and helped set this interview up, and I was just curious to kind of how you guys would go about calling games this season. Now, we had Matt Barry on a week or so ago, Sean, and they stayed in Bristol to call the game, the UCA game. But you and Todd Blackledge, y'all went down to Wake Forest and called that game. Just kind of what have you talked with just the executives in ESPN, and how is that going to go this season for you guys up in the broadcast booth?
Well, I think we are one of about 3 or 4 of our production teams that is going to travel and be at the stadium every week. I think the rest of our teams are going to either be broadcasting, as you said, from a studio in Bristol or Charlotte or maybe somewhere else, or they're going to be doing it from their homes. And, you know, a lot of my friends, I've kind of seen the setup that they have at home. So, you know, it's necessary, obviously, giving everything that's going on in the world. In our case, you know, we have to arrive by Thursday afternoon to get COVID tested when we arrive at the hotel, and then we have to stay at the hotel until the test comes back negative, which in our case, this past week at Wake Forest wasn't until the middle of the afternoon on Friday. So, you know, it's necessary. It's you know, even though we're at the game site, it's a lot different than it typically is. I mean, our stats person could not be in the booth because everybody had to be social distance. So it was just myself and Todd Blackledge and our spotter, and he was much further away than he would ordinarily be. I was actually looking at his spotting board through a camera and a monitor because he was so far away. I couldn't actually see the board itself. And then, you know, everybody else who would typically be in the booth, stage manager, you know, runners, there's usually 3, 4, 5 other people up there. They couldn't be in the booth. So it's a lot different.
It was sure good to hear you and, you know, to see college football. And so you got to see Clemson, the number 1 team in the country. How did they look in your opinion? And are they worthy of the number 1 badge?
Yeah, they look like the number 1 team in the country. You know, we talked to Dabo. You know, and obviously he might be slightly prone to overstatement every now and then, but not really. We've talked to him a lot of times, especially in the last few years, doing a lot of Clemson games. And, you know, he said to us in our Zoom call, you know, that's another difference. You know, typically we meet with the teams in person on Friday, but we met with both teams via Zoom, Dabo and his group on Wednesday and the Wake Forest people on Friday. You know, and Dabo was saying, I think this is going to be the most talented roster that we've ever had. And I thought, wow, they've had some really talented teams. But then you watch the game. I mean, this freshman class that they have, he said it's the best freshman group they've had, and I believe it. You know, they rolled in 2 freshman D linemen who were 2 of the top 5 recruits in the country who, you know, look like seniors. And yeah, I think they're the best team. You know, I haven't seen Alabama in person yet. Obviously, Ohio State's not playing. But it's hard for me to believe anybody is as talented as they are based on what we saw. You know, that was one of the most talented college football teams I've ever seen, never mind one of the most talented Clemson teams.
So the ACC and the Big 12 are underway. The SEC is 12 days out. Is that an advantage or a disadvantage for the Southeastern Conference this year?
I don't know. It's a good question. I'm sure they're itching to play. To have to wait until late September to start is tough. But, this whole thing is so disjointed. I mean, we're doing a game this weekend. We were supposed to do Saturday night Virginia at Virginia Tech. And then we found out this past Saturday morning that game got postponed. So now the Louisville game is moving to the night. So Fowler and Herbstreit are going to do that. And we picked up Tulsa at Oklahoma State on noon Eastern time on ESPN. So I think we're going to continue to see a lot of this. Games moved, games postponed. You even wonder if they're going to be able to play a full schedule at the rate it's going. So I don't know if it's an advantage or a disadvantage, but I do know one thing, that when they start playing in the SEC, they'll be very grateful that they are. That was the overwhelming sentiment that we got from the Clemson and Wake Forest players and coaches. They were just so grateful and appreciative and thankful for everything that it took to get them to that place and then to have the opportunity to play.
Talking with Sean McDonough, ESPN college football broadcaster here on the Morning Rush. So we mentioned Todd Blackledge earlier, Sean. Todd's Taste of the Town growing up was one of my favorite segments of any sports program. Just going with him across the country, getting to go to these games. I know it's a little different with COVID and all. Does this guy just have like a place or two that he knows in every single college town y'all visit?
Yes, he does, and he knows every item on the menu. He has to work out like 2 hours a day for the way that he eats to stay in the great shape that he's in. But we still have a lot of people. He hasn't done that segment now in, I'm guessing, 7 or 8 years, and everywhere we go, people come up and tell him how much they love that segment, even though it's not still happening. So I think it fell by the wayside because it just got harder and harder to get it in, and it takes an awful lot of time to go to those places, produce the segment, and it's time that it really takes away from preparing for the game. So I think that's sort of why it did drop off. But, yeah, I'm like you. I really enjoyed it, too. I mean, he's a great guy. He's a great guy, period. I mean, he's a wonderful person and obviously great on TV. And a tremendous football analyst, but he's also fun to travel with because he does indeed know where the good spots are, particularly in the SEC.
Sean, I want to congratulate you with your contract extension with ESPN. And what I found interesting in your career is you had what many people perceive as the top job as a play-by-play guy, the Monday Night Football gig, but you wanted to come back to college. Now, Tommy and I can really appreciate that. We enjoy talking college football 24/7 on this program. Just from your perspective, why did you feel like moving back to college football was the right move for your career?
The 2 years I did Monday Night Football, first of all, it was a tremendous honor, obviously, to be given that opportunity. At the time I got hired to do it, I was the fifth play-by-play person in the 47-year history of Monday Night Football. And, the other people were Keith Jackson, Frank Gifford, Al Michaels, and Mike Tirico. So when you're invited to stand along that company, it was humbling, really. It was very emotional for me. But I found myself really missing college football, the atmosphere, the pageantry, the anticipation, the lead-up to the game, the traditions, the enthusiasm. There's a variety, there's a difference in place to place. I saw Mac Brown interviewed Saturday on game day talking about, empty stadiums, and he said, what we're missing most is the traditions, and that was the hard thing for me about Saturday. So much of what I love about college football is the atmosphere, and there wasn't any atmosphere, and there won't be any this year, obviously, unless this changes significantly soon. So it's very different, and I think it is lessening a little bit of the experience of college football on a Saturday, but it's better than the alternative, which is no college football. So, I just have a passion for it. I think they're two different things. I'm an NFL fan. I'm certainly looking forward to watching the 2 Monday Night Football games tonight, but I'm in the right place for me.
Sean, your voice sparks a painful memory, though, for many Razorback fans. I don't know if you remember the Arkansas-Tennessee game from '98, but you played the highlight.
Of course I do. I was a little surprised you're bringing it up in an Arkansas environment, but of course I do.
Sean, I was debating putting it in your intro this morning. I was like, I feel like I have to, even though it might be painful.
We like to waller in our own despair here, but I wanted to ask you, what do you remember about that? Obviously, we call it the Sternover, but It was obviously a tough moment for Arkansas fans that we'll get over it in 30 or 40 years from now. So
yeah, well, that's one as a fan that you probably never do get over. And it's funny because it was in 1998, obviously, and I went to Syracuse when I was a student there. I worked for 3.5 years for our legendary football coach, Dick McPherson, who's in the College Football Hall of Fame, and it was one of the great experiences in my life. He became like a second dad to me, and one of the great honors of my life truly was a couple summers ago when he passed away, and his family asked me to deliver the eulogy at his funeral. And so I'm a passionate Syracuse person, and the first game of that year, Tennessee should have lost to Syracuse. They kicked the field goal on the last play of the game, and they got a very controversial pass interference call to keep the drive alive on a fourth down play. The game should have been over. So, I think they were fortunate twice in that season on their way to the national championship, because obviously the turnover, as you called it, if that doesn't happen, they're not going to win the national championship either. So, tremendous game. Knowing I was going to talk to you guys, I went back online this morning and watched a little bit of it and read a little bit about it, and jogged my memory. But it kind of confirmed what I do remember, that Arkansas played them for a lot of the game. Really until the fourth quarter, and Sterner played very well until that point. And I think it was 21-3 at one point that Arkansas was ahead, and they had the fourth down stop and had the game won. And I feel terrible for Sterner because he got his feet tangled up with Brandon Burlsworth, and that could have happened to any quarterback. And but as you said, really painful loss. A miraculous win. I remember that a lot of people had left the stadium. I think there were a lot of Tennessee fans who were in the parking lot when it happened. But one of you were asked me earlier about the Michigan State ending, and that this is another one. Even though it wasn't the last play of the game, it was at the very end of the game, and then they gave it to Travis Henry 5 times, and he just slammed his way down the field. So one of the great games that I've called, even though unfortunately. For you guys, that's like being here in Boston, the Bill Buckner ground ball for the Red Sox. I still haven't gotten over that, even though the Red Sox won 4 World Series since.
So you can understand our despair here on that.
I do.
Yeah.
And as an announcer, even in the moment, you have to be sensitive to that. It's because there are people on both sides who are emotionally experiencing opposite ends of the spectrum. I mean, I have Michigan people walk up to me in airports and say, you were part of one of the worst moments of my life, to which I always say, well, then you've had a pretty good life if a football game is the worst thing that happened in your life.
Pretty good.
And I have Michigan State people come up to me. They can recite verbatim every word of that call. I had one guy come up to me and play his voicemail on his phone that was my call at the end of that Michigan State game. So, you realize even in the moment how gut-wrenching this is, especially for, fans of Arkansas to lose that game.
Yeah, it speaks to the importance of the job you do. Speaking of Michigan State, Big Ten, a lot of news out, and it seems like a very heavy decision coming for that conference sometime today or certainly early part of this week. What do you think, in your opinion, will be the future of Big Ten football this fall?
It's hard to say. You had 11 presidents out of 14, I think it was, say we shouldn't play. So I heard yesterday, I think 9 of those people have to change their mind, or 6 of them. They'd have to be able to justify it. Now, the improvements in the testing and the speed of the testing, the cost of the testing, I think will be a big part of it. But, I think if you're the Big Ten presidents and you made the decision based on, we just don't think this is the right thing to do from a health standpoint. And then you look around and you say, okay, these other conferences are playing, but they're canceling games every week. I think we have 3 or 4 more this week. As mentioned, the game that we were supposed to do got moved. I think Houston and Memphis is being affected. There's still clusters and upticks and on campuses all over the place. I don't know how they justify changing their mind given what's still going on. So I'd love to see them do it as a football fan. I have a lot of friends who are coaches in that league who are itching to go. I think it would be a great thing for the players who desperately want to play. But I think they're going to have to come up with a very good way to explain it if they decide, okay, never mind, we're going forward now.
Sean, let me top off the interview with this, man. We were joking about Todd's Taste of the Town a while back. Of all the college towns you visited, of all the great college football towns that you've been to, is there a particular restaurant or place that you've gotten to experience that stands out amongst the rest?
Oh, wow. It's a great question. Boy, and I'm going to give you a no answer because there's not one above the other that comes racing to mind. Boy, I'm sorry. There's a lot of them, why don't you call? I'll call Todd. There was actually a place in Auburn that he took us to last year that was fantastic, and I can't remember the name of it. It was kind of off the beaten path a little bit, but yeah, you'll have to ask Todd the next time you have him on to answer that question because I'm going to whiff. I hate to say it. The reality is, most Thursday and Friday nights I'm hunkered down in my room. Watching film and doing my charts and reading and getting ready for the game. And in this COVID era now, we're basically not leaving the hotel. I mean, we didn't leave the hotel at Wake Forest. So, anyway, I'm sorry for such a dud answer to end this wonderful conversation.
He's hoping for really good room service this year.
That's what.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it is. And I still haven't been in an indoor restaurant. I mean, we've been ultra careful. If we can sit outside and have it be, socially distanced, then that's fine. And thankfully, we've been healthy to this point. I mean, I'm going to have tomorrow my 7th COVID test. As I said, we're tested every week. And when I did the PGA Championship for ESPN in early August down in San Francisco, we were tested a couple times there. And I'm doing some Red Sox games here in Boston on their radio network, and we get tested before every homestand. So you're tired. I'm getting used to the really fun experience of the stick up the nose.
Yeah, you're tired of Q-tips.
Oh yeah, I tell you what, I don't know if you've had it, but it's not fun, and but it's necessary. And I wish everybody could get tested. It would be a great thing for our country if that could happen. I think it would help keep this under control.
ESPN college football broadcaster Sean McDonough. Sean, we really appreciate the work that you do for college football on Saturday nights, and thanks for giving us some time this morning, man.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. Anytime. And, thanks for doing your part to talk about college football. It really is a great game, and let's hope that they can play the season and play it safely.
All right, hopefully we'll catch up before an Arkansas game you have this year.
With the good
well, please, and if you do, ask me that restaurant question again. I'm going to prepare a list of my favorite places around the country.
All right,
Will do.
All right, Sean McDonough with ESPN here with us on The Morning Rush.